Alright guys, in this video I have the CB750 engine in a million pieces. We'll go through them one by one and see what's needed for the rebuild. Okay, the first issue I found is the crank is severely worn. Right here is one of the journals. They all pretty much look like this. This is probably the worst one. I can feel that ridge with my fingernail. So unfortunately these cranks can't be ground and put new bearings, and even the cost of grinding is just not cost prohibitive. So I'm gonna look for a nice used crank, and we'll see how that goes. I haven't taken the rods off yet, but I'm assuming those bearings are bad as well, so I'm just gonna plan for new rod bearings. I'll wait till I get the used crank so I can measure it and then order the rod bearings. There's no point of taking those off just yet. Okay, here are the crank bearings. Some of these are showing some wear. They may not look too bad on camera, but when I run my finger across them, there is like rough grit embedded into the bearing material. So I am not going to use these. So I'm rubbing my finger on this one and it's extremely rough. So, plus, it looks like these are green. See the green mark right there. What I'll have to do is, once I get a different crank, these may not even be the right size. So, I'm just going to replace them. Over here, we got some transmission components. The clutch basket looks like it's in excellent shape, so we'll reuse that. Over here is the primary cushion wheel. This is where the primary chains go on. It's two pieces, and there's rubber dampers in here, and as we go through all these parts I'll show you all the rubber bits, and they are just very hard, and when they get hard they get brittle and they flake, and it's time for replacing. So this guy right here I'm going to send out to be rebuilt. What they'll do is drill out the rivets, separate it, and just replace all the rubber cushions. But all the transmission gears look great, no chips, no cracks. As far as rubber, here is the chain tensioner for these chains that roll on here for the primary. And this guy here, if you dig your nail into it, it's just pretty hard. So we'll just replace this whole unit due to that rubber wheel. Oh, and I forgot to mention, these are the chains that I'm talking about. There's two primary chains and a cam chain on the crank. I'm going to go ahead and replace all that as well. Here's the oil pump. I haven't taken it apart yet, but it's going to get a full rebuild. There's some O-rings in here. We'll measure the rotors and the clearances and all that, and then I'll mess with the pressure relief system and rebuild all that. Here's the clutch. It looks good except for the fact that the friction plates look glazed over, so we'll just replace those. The steels have a little bit of a rust and discoloration on there, so I don't know if I need to replace these yet. What I'll do is I'll blast them so they'll be nice and clean, and then I'll check them for thickness, for the correct thickness, and if they're warped. Over here, here's the one of the cam chain tensioners or slides or whatever. There's a chip in here. This plastic is hard as a rock, so I'll go ahead and replace that. Here's one of the cam chain wheels. Again, if I try to dig my nail in it, it's hard as a rock, so I'll replace that. Okay, I know this looks like a freaking mess over here, but the cam towers look good. All the cam journals look really good. The cam looks good. So all that needs to just be really cleaned up, degreased, further inspected, but I think all these parts will be okay. Get the shaft first. Okay, so here's the cylinder we just did, and here is the one that we didn't do. You can see that, it's cleaning up the surface really nice. All I did is gave this a quick wipe. So all this right here looks really good, right? But as you can see further down in here, these are the spots where the pistons were sitting, and unfortunately it was a little rusty, and once you start honing it, you feel almost a divot. I can feel it with my fingernail, and this one's not too bad. I'll show you another cylinder that's worse. This one is going to need to be bored. Anyway, you can see that I got a nice 45-degree angle. So right about here, you know, this would be 0, this would be 90, halfway between there's 45. So I got a nice crosshatch going. It's cleaning it up really nice. But unfortunately, these cylinders are too far gone. Now, normally you would want to do this. You'd want to clean them up, and then you'd want to measure it to see whether it's in spec, whether it's in round. And we'll do some measuring once this comes back from the machine shop. But right now, there's no point of really measuring it. Definitely needs an overbore. Okay, so this is the cylinder I initially did. The spot I'm talking about is right here. If I run my finger over this, it is a noticeable step. I can catch it with my fingernail. And that is metal that has rusted away. It's pitted. It's gone. So unfortunately, it has to be bored. And you know, if I were to hone this cylinder, same thing. So off to the machine shop it will go. Okay, what we're going to do now is measure the valve to valve guide clearance per the service manual. So for the intake valve, it could be no more than 4 thou in the X and Y direction, and 3 thou for the exhaust. Okay, I actually have it set up where I had to move the metal plate onto the workbench. It comes up and over, and we are going to wiggle the valve this way and see what the dial indicator reads. So let me just zoom in here. Okay, so I'm going to try to zero it out. Okay, that's 0 there. I'm pushing it down, and I'm going up. So you can see that they want 3 thousandths, and I am at 0 here and all the way up to this is really difficult to do, actually. So we're clearly over. If I go light, it's 3 thou. If I push a little harder, so it's not too bad. It looks like I'm floating between 3 and 4 thou, which is in service limit in this direction. You know, this is obviously pretty crude how I'm doing this here, but at least it gives you a good idea. The one thing I'm worried about is these valve seats are really rusty. So once it's blasted, there might be some pitting, and you know, it might not be giving us a good seal. But anyway, let's move it in the other direction. Okay, let's go the other direction. I suspect that it'll be less this way. Doesn't look like it though. So that's way more than 3 to 4 thou. So what I'm going to do is, this is just valve grinding compound. I'm going to smear just a drop on here. Okay, and then I got one of these guys. I actually have 2 of them. See which one. This one's probably going to work the best here. I just licked it. Okay, you got a little suction cup. And we're just going to grind away. And once you hear that noise kind of mellow out, lift the valve up and spin it. And that'll kind of redistribute the compound. See, now it's almost ground down. Just lift it a little bit. Okay, that should be enough just to get a pattern. And we'll see where we're at. Okay, so here's a close-up of the pattern. So you can see the dull gray all the way around. That is the pattern that these 2 surfaces make. Okay, and what you want to do is inspect it and look really closely to see if there's any pitting. The seat actually looks good, but the valve here has some pitting. Okay, so when you have pitting, you know, the gases will leak between this seat and the valve, and that's not good. And that just happens. This is rusty. It was rusty, and so forth. So right there's some pitting. Also, we want to measure the width of that face. And once the face gets really wide, that means the valves and the seat were pounding together and they're worn. So spec is 039, so almost 40 thousandths to 51 thousandths. So what I have here, this is 41 thou right now, and I'm measuring it. So it's definitely, it looks like it's within spec of the width. Yeah, I'm measuring about, 3940, so the width is correct. We'll get in here and try to measure it. Yeah, the width is not an issue. So what happened is just there's some pitting in here, and I guess I can work it with the grinding. But given that the valve guide is kind of loose, it needs a valve job. And also, a proper fresh valve job does wonders for an engine. I mean, it'll seal it tighter, and it just frankly, will work better. So we got to send the cylinders out for rework, for machine work. We got to send this out for, machine work. And one thing that I want to consider doing is running an MLS gasket. So that's like the multi-layer steel. So what they'll do is they'll skim the head, they'll skim the cylinder, and then I can get an MLS gasket, and those things seal really nice and don't require retorquing and all that good stuff. So, maybe that's the way to go here. Okay, so here are the bolts from the 750. You can see a lot of these are really rusty, really nasty looking. And the deal is about 80 or 90%, probably 90, 95% of these bolts are available to buy brand new from Honda. But for the other 5%, you have no option but to restore them, okay? Like this part here, for example, this for hose clip or whatever, and I think some of these bolts. But anyway, so what you can do is send them out for replating. What I'm going to do is I'm going to strip them. What I did is I put them in the vapor blaster, and I stripped the plating and the rust off of it, and they are nice and smooth and all that good stuff. So they are a good blank canvas for the plater. Now, how plating works is when you ship something to a plater, it is usually a minimum lot charge. 60, 80 bucks or whatever. So if you send one part or a box full of parts, they're going to charge you the same amount. So since only 5% are unavailable, I have no choice but to send them out for plating. I'm going to get charged 80 bucks, so I might as well strip all these and send them out for replating, and then it'll look really nice. What really sucks is I had these all bagged up and labeled where they go, and then I had to dump them out to what you see here, and I'm gonna have to send them in. Hopefully none of them will get lost, and when they come back, I'll have to find out where they all freaking go. But anyway, that's what's pretty cool about this blaster. You can put a heavy cut media in there and strip the plating and the rust off, and then send it out for zinc plating. All right, guys, so I'm gonna send out the parts that are needed for machine work. Let's get those going first, because that's obviously going to take the longest amount of time. I'll also place an order for some OEM parts, aftermarket parts, whatever I need to get this thing back assembled. So stay tuned for that.